and welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring today's most pressing global issues into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. For the first time since the U.S. presidential election, North Korea's state-run newspaper, the Rodong Shinmun, reported that leader Kim Jong-un issued a warning that accuses Washington of fueling global tensions. Kim emphasized the need for war preparation and criticized U.S. support for Ukraine, even suggesting the possibility of a third world war. He reiterated North Korea's unwavering commitment to strengthening its nuclear arsenal, declaring that nuclear power has become an irreversible policy in fulfilling the regime's first mission of deterrence and a second mission of a preemptive strike in emergency situations. Meanwhile, South Korea's intelligence agency mentioned the possibility of Kim visiting Russia, a potential move that could confirm the regime's military involvement in the war in Ukraine. For more on this, we're joined by Mark Barry, Associate Editor Emeritus at the International Journal on World Peace. Welcome to the program, Dr. Barry.
Thank you.
And we're also joined by Kim Young-jun, a National Security College professor at Korean National Defense University. Great to have you, Professor Kim.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with Dr. Barry. So like I've said, Kim Jong-un mentioned World War III in his recent speech, raising the level of threats. How would you read into such a strong message by Kim?
It's not a unilateral message. He's aligning himself with President Putin. The treaty was finally ratified by the Duma, upper and lower house, signed by President Putin. And he's using language that President Putin himself would not necessarily use. So as a junior partner, he's referring strictly to the United States arming of huge quantities of munitions since 2022 to Ukraine and since 2023 to Israel, which Kim is claiming raises the fear of a third world war. And he's using his enhanced alliance relationship with Russia as a means to assert the DPRK's place, newly found place, you might say, in the international system. And so he's trying to enhance international recognition for North Korea, which has been barely on the radar in terms of the ability for the regime to project any degree of strength and viability. So this is, in a sense, new terrain for Kim, and he's proud to make bombastic statements.
Right. Now, Professor Kim, some people argue that this message is a response to reports of North Korea's deployment of troops to Russia, which is causing instability within the North Korean military. What do you make of the situation inside North Korea?
Yes, some experts always hope deploying North Korean troops or possible casualty of the soldier may lead some instability inside of North Korea. But look at Russia. Russia is unstable. The dictator always used sacrifice of soldier as a patriotism, and they made them as a war hero and defending motherland. So North Korea regime easily will make any casualty of the soldier during the war as a war hero, and will provide some reward to their family, like apartment in Pyongyang, or advantage to family like admission ticket to Kim Il-sung University. So North Korea is a well-managed garrison state, unfortunately, and there has been little instability even during the 1990 famine, leading millions of people die because of no food. So North Korean regime will make this deployment of North Korean troops like the Korean troops to the Vietnam during the 1960s. So unfortunately, everybody wants North Korean stability, but my thinking is definitely not.
Right. Now, lately, South Korea's National Intelligence Service mentioned the possibility of Kim Jong-un making a third visit to Russia. Dr. Barry, what do you think of the chances of this? And if he does, wouldn't this be a confirmation that North Korea actually has sent troops to Ukraine?
Well, again, the key point, I think, is international recognition and enhanced prestige. Kim doesn't want to make another visit to Vladivostok or to the Russian Far East. He wants to go to Moscow like his grandfather did several times, where he met Stalin, where his own father met, I believe, Putin some time ago. So it's the same stature to be comparable to his father and his grandfather, and make Kim Jong-un appear the equal of his father and his grandfather. And he wants to have, I would presume, all the trappings reserved for the visit of a head of state. And I think that's why Foreign Minister Madam Cho surprisingly asked to meet with Putin. She stayed an extra couple of days because she wanted to make what she knew would be a difficult request, but to make it on behalf of Kim Jong-un. And Putin did meet with her, but I have a strong feeling he probably responded, well, yes, but at the right time. But given the newly signed Treaty of Friendship, a Moscow visit would be cast as a natural development of mutual relations, and not at all an admission of the assistance that's being provided, which in a sense is not the world's business in the view of Putin and Kim. It's a bilateral relationship based on a mutual defense commitment.
Right, so it's rather than confirming the troop deployment, it's more of kind of raising his reputation as well as highlighting the ties with Russia, right?
That is correct. It's elevation of prestige.
Right. Circling back to Kim's recent speech, he described North Korea's first mission as defense. Professor Kim, could you elaborate on their second mission? How much of a possibility is a preemptive strike?
Yes, the second mission should be a development, especially Russia is able to provide some advantages, especially for the energy part, like Russia gas pipelines or something. North Korea call this a Byungjin Northern dual track for national interest. First is a defense by nuclear weapons and economic development for well-being of North Korean people. So there is always the possibility accidental war if North Korea continue this one, like your question about the preemptive strike. So North Korea definitely now is considering about preemptive strike as well, and we have already have to thinking about the misunderstanding of signal and warning, like Cold War history case between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. So intentionally or unintentionally, the accidental warfare will be possible, especially in the nuclear weapon era, and so that's why the ROC and U.S. should prepare for all scenario, including the more better the sharing information, especially with Japan and NATO in other Australia country.
Right. Is there any other ways that South Korea could prepare for the situation of a preemptive strike?
Yeah, we have our own 3-axis system, kill chain, KMPL. So we have definitely developed our own system, especially ISL capability, our satellite. So we have a better the information capability. At the same time, U.S. and Japan has shared their own information with us. So this is a much better preparation for it.
Right. Now, this speech primarily targeted the United States with criticism. And the logic is that U.S. intervention in Europe and the Middle East has escalated the threat of war, justifying North Korea's nuclear development. Dr. Barry, what message do you think Kim Jong-un wants to send to President-elect Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, I think he'd want to reiterate, as he said some months ago, I believe, on the possibility of Trump being elected, which is that personal relations are not what counts. It's the state-to-state relations. And you could have a great conversation, get along well, have some good laughs. But if you don't improve in a mutual and balanced way, interstate relations, it doesn't mean anything. Now, this time, because of the entry of North Korean troops into the battle against Ukraine, and in which the United States has labeled these North Korean troops as co-belligerents, not just simply providing ammunition, then Putin is part of the equation, and in many ways, Kim is a subcontractor. And so I believe that Trump will have to involve in some way President Putin because of this newfound relationship and the treaty, the friendship treaty that's been signed, Trump will have to deal with Putin not only in finding some way to settle the war in Ukraine, but he will have to in some ways go through Putin in order to deal with Kim and in fact to ask Putin's intervention to deal with Kim. So he's starting on a much poorer foundation, President-elect Trump, than he was in his first term in terms of dealing with Kim Jong-un. And I think Kim Jong-un feels this is a guy I don't necessarily need to deal with, but it's something I'll be happy to discuss with my friend, President Putin.
Right. So the message just to clarify, so what exactly does Kim expect from Trump?
I think he doesn't expect anything, and I think this is why I've said on a number of occasions, including with Professor Kim back in early part of this year, that I think the Kim dynasty and ultimately Kim Jong-un have given up on dealing with the United States as a trustworthy entity that's good for its money. And President Trump or President Biden or whoever is an example of someone who feigns the intent to have good relations but can't deliver. But the reason has always been for the Kim dynasty to balance the tremendous pressure coming from a rising China and now with an assertive and hegemonically inclined China led by President Xi.
Right. So now it depends on how Trump would push through with his policies on North Korea, right? And
you're going to see a lot less foreign policy in this second Trump term, a lot less. I mean, the feeling here stateside is unreal, absolutely unreal. And you're going to see a complete crashing of U.S. Involvement in the world over the next 12 months, beginning in late January. It's in the air, and it's just something that I think we're going to have to see how it pans out.
All right. Now, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un mentioned the trilateral military cooperation between U.S., South Korea, and Japan, calling it a major threat to peace and stability, and he criticized it as a U.S.-led military alliance. Professor Kim, what about you? Why is North Korea so wary of this trilateral cooperation?
Yes, trilateral cooperation, especially between the U.S., Japan, and ROC, is a really strong challenge to North Korea, especially in security realm, because the three countries are able to share not just information, but U.S. military has their own United Nations command layer bases, 7 layer bases in Japan. So this is a very strong logistic and supply chain, especially for the Korean Peninsula crisis, and South Korea has their own defense capability, and Japan has a strong Navy and also Air Force as well. So this trilateral security partnership is especially for the mid-term and long-term, and North Korea are really concerned about it. And this is not just the ROC-US combined forces, but this is a more threat to North Korea.
Right. And the latest remarks by Kim Jong-un came after the U.S. Gave its first approval for Ukraine to use its ATACMS to strike Russian territory. Now, Professor, what kind of missile is this, and what is it capable of?
Yeah, ATACMS has a strong reputation, especially in the Gulf War, and this is a maximum 300 kilometer, and it's pretty good. And British Storm Shadow is a similar weapon, so now Ukraine is able to use, and because of Biden administration approved it, they can attack, especially Russian supply chain or logistic facility by using ATACMS. It is used GPS, and so it is pretty much targeting is accurate, and British Storm Shadow and ATACMS of the U.S. is a strong weapons, especially against Russia. So Russia has a strong reaction, possible use of nuclear weapon to the non-nuclear weapon state, supported by the nuclear state. So this is a very strong weapon, and Biden administration anyway approved it, and Russia care about this one.
Right. Then, Dr. Barry, just as our Professor Kim said, this is a very powerful weapon. Then why has the U.S. been reluctant to allow the use of this kind of missiles until now?
Stateside, they're called ATACMS, which sounds like a nifty little acronym. Pentagon loves acronyms, and that's how it's pronounced stateside. But to avoid a wider conflict, that's always been the reason to withhold or restrict the use of the ATACMS to targets within Ukraine or Russian-held territory in Ukraine. But now Ukraine needs to keep what it's captured in Kursk for the sake of later negotiations. So, and also the justification at this time is now that North Korean troops are fighting alongside Russians, as I said, as co-belligerents. The U.S. has given a certain degree of wider permission to use them, but only in and around the Kursk area. So their first use yesterday or the day before was in a Russian region that neighbors Kursk, but where the Russian troops amass in order to then attempt to enter the Kursk area. So that's within the framework that the U.S. guidelines have stipulated. And my feeling is President Biden, although the entry of North Korean troops is the ostensible reason for granting this permission at this time, is something that I think President Biden would have taken. He would have taken this step even had Vice President Harris won the election. It just was sort of the logical next step.
Mm-hmm. Now, amid these developments, Russia has adjusted its nuclear doctrine, allowing the use of nuclear weapons against non-nuclear countries that are supported by nuclear states. Now, this response comes in the context of rising tensions. Dr. Barry, do you think the Biden administration anticipated this kind of reaction?
Putin announced this doctrine revision coming back, in fact, as early as August and September. And also his number two, Medvedev, has been threatening in vaguer terms tactical nuclear weapon use. But in an interview with NBC News yesterday, Secretary of Defense Austin, currently in Laos, said that the U.S. has known for weeks that Russia was revamping its policy on using nuclear weapons, but he added that he didn't see a change in Russia's strategic force posture. Now, that said, I woke up this morning here in the New York area and I read that Russia appears to have used a nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic missile in the war for the first time in Russia's history against a civilian target in Dnipro. So, we shouldn't be too optimistic that this situation won't escalate in a way that will be very, very difficult for all parties concerned. So I take Secretary of Defense Austin at his word. But we should, I feel uncomfortable when I see some of the other experts on U.S. television saying that this is a lot of bombast and rattling of the saber. It should be taken far more seriously.
Right, it's a very concerning situation indeed. As tensions seem to intensify in the already deadly war, French President Emmanuel Macron stated that the U.S. has approved long-range weapons for Ukraine to strike Russian territory because of North Korea's potential involvement. Professor Kim, do you agree with Macron's assessment?
Absolutely, absolutely. North Korea, in fact, is one of the strong regions for the Biden administration action because before North Korean troops deployment, Russia and Ukraine are only the direct challenge between each other, and the other country only send their weapons or logistics rather than their own son and daughter as a soldier. But North Korea sent to deploy a lot of troops, and this is an expansion of the war and possible for the delay war. So Biden administration need to do something strong signal to North Korean soldier and Russian Putin to stop this one. So this is a very strong signal to the North Korea and Russia. But unfortunately, maybe this will be another the level of expansion of the war. So we'll see. But anyway, North Korean factor is one of the most important the region for the Biden administration approval of the ATACMS.
Right. So at this point, then how do you assess the relationship between North Korea and Russia? Do you think the two countries will further strengthen military cooperation?
In terms of their point of view, this is a great partnership anyway between the two, because Russia and North Korea anyway under the sanction international society, they are isolated, so they need each other, especially in the time of Russian-Ukraine war. And North Korea is one of the best beneficiary from this partnership, because Kim Jong-un anyway enjoy his the exposure to the international media as one of the strong leader. At the same time, to the domestic audience, he also shown as a great partnership with the strong leader in the international stage. So the problem is, if North Korea has a problem on the Korean Peninsula crisis, Russia have to do something now as a reward. So we never thought about Russian intervention in the Korean crisis, but now we have to worry about Russian soldier or Russian tactical nuclear weapons cover, whatever Russian engagement in the Korean Peninsula security crisis situation. So Russia is able to provide technology also like tactical nuclear weapons or SLBM, ICBM, satellite, and others, so it will be a great threat to the South Korea and U.S. forces in Korea, U.S. forces in Japan, and Japan itself. So this is a game changer. So we have to prepare for all scenario, and we have to stop it by diplomatic measure.
Right. And Dr. Baer, you mentioned that it's a very concerning situation right now, but what are the implications for global security if North Korea continues to expand its nuclear capabilities while receiving support from Russia?
I continue to view Putin's relationship with Kim Jong-un closer to his relationship with the late Prigozhin, who headed the Wagner Group, briefly led an attempted coup, and thought he had repaired relations with Putin, and then died in an airplane accident caused by a bomb under the wing in August of a couple of years ago, I believe. So I think Russia, in terms of what it chooses to share with North Korea, will have the appearance of sharing more than it actually is. It'll share what it chooses, not necessarily what Kim wants or requests. Putin doesn't want to create a more capable North Korea that can later threaten or compromise him. He will keep Kim in his place, and Russia clearly distinguishes what it will and will not give North Korea. And whatever Kim obtains will presumably be useful in the broad sense of the word, but very likely there will be critical missing pieces that Putin deliberately withholds to inhibit the North's military capability. He wants, much like some other people who are acting in various authoritarian capacities, you give the appearance of giving people working for you what they want, but you actually withhold enough such that they can never pose a threat to you. So I think that's the standard paradigm in which Putin will treat Kim. And I think he may give some things such as satellite navigation technology, but I think in terms of actually improving nuclear capability and becoming a threat to Russia as well as China, because after all, there is a partnership between Russia and China, Putin doesn't want to escalate it to that level. So he always wants to make sure that he has the upper hand with Kim and that Kim knows his place. And that, as I said earlier, a trip to Moscow will only come, quote, at the right time.
All right. Dr. Barry and Professor Kim, thank you so much for your insights tonight. We're running out of time. We'll have to end our discussion here. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.